Most students go back to school today, but a recent divorce can add stress for you and your child. Coming up, back to school advice for divorced parents. Welcome back to Great Day, Washington. Well, the new school year can be stressful for parents and students, but for families in transition, it can be a very hectic time of year.
Well, here with some advice for parents going through a recent divorce or separation is Kathryn Dickerson, principal at SmolenPlevy. And before we get started, I just wanted to say those were pictures of some of our viewers and their kids' first day of school pics, so thanks for sending them in. Now back to you, Kathryn. A big complaint is expenses for parents coming back to school. And if you're divorced, I'm sure it just gets that much more complicated.
It absolutely does. It also gets further complicated by how much you have to get them, because parents don't necessarily appreciate how much is going to go into all of this, and then you have to decide how you're going to share those expenses between one another, especially now that you've doubled your debt load because you're supporting two households on what used to be one income.
So what are some of the big expenses for kids?
Oh, let's see. There is this calculator,
oh, yes,
right?
that lovely thing.
But if you see the children going back to school today, you'll see how heavy their backpacks are. Schools have now started giving out lists of supplies before school even starts, saying we want you to buy all of these things for your children. There are binders, papers, but there's also the cell phone, there's also the laptop or the iPad, because schools are now doing their textbooks on those or giving out homework assignments on those items.
So doesn't child support cover all of these expenses?
Well, it's supposed to, right? The idea is that child support is supposed to cover all the basic needs of what it takes to raise a child, but it doesn't really. Unfortunately, it's up to maybe about $600 per child for each school year.
Wow.
And so there are certain things that it doesn't cover that it might, well, it was supposed to cover, like the laptop, right? Because child support figures, they're reviewed every 3-4 years, and so they're not caught up to date as to the current expenses. And they cover the entire state, so what it takes to raise a child in, say, Southwest Virginia is probably not the same as what it takes to raise a child in Northern Virginia.
So if that's the case, then how do you figure out who pays for what, especially if there's more than one child?
You try to cooperate. You try to cooperate with the other
That's
parent.
the key word right there. Try to cooperate.
And if the two of you have problems making decisions together, then you can divide it up in different ways. For example, if you can agree, then you can do it 50-50, or you can do it per ratio of income, or you can do it by child. I'll take this child, you'll take that child. You can do it by category. I'll do all the electronics, you do the clothing. Or you can divide it also by event. You know what? The children are with you every week before school starts. You do all the back to school stuff. I'll take care of Christmas. So it's whatever fashion the two of you can make this work for your children.
That's kind of what we did. Sorry, Mark. I'm a stepmom, and with two kids, and so one parent took one child and one parent took the other, and it just kind of keeps you from doubling up on things or forgetting things. You have this list and you have this list.
But it could get tricky if one child has more expensive needs than another child. If you have one child in an expensive sport and one child in a less expensive sport. And then, Kathryn, you also say most divorces happen at the end of the school year. And so by back to school time, it's the first time the parents are having to figure out who buys what in the relationship cycle that has now ended, right?
Right. Parents separate also at the end of the last school year. So for them, it's been about 3 months. They haven't necessarily resolved all their financial issues. They haven't figured out who's covering what yet. So this could be the first major co-parenting decision when you're in two separate households.
What should families that are going through this transition avoid at all costs?
They should avoid doing nothing, because what happens when you do nothing is that your child shows up at school and they're the only child without the supplies necessary. The other thing you shouldn't do is compete, right? Oh, you got a laptop, well, I'm going to get an iPad, and compete back and forth, and then say, guess what, you don't get to use this over at your other parent's house.
So you shouldn't say that. You know what? I feel really bad for the kids, because I'm like, if it's going to be contentious, if it's going to be an argument over back to school supplies, the kid loses out. The kids, they know what's going on, even from a young age. So what can you offer parents as far as advice on how to make sure that the kid wins as much as he or she can?
Communicate, which is often very hard, but if you set aside your own personal differences and appreciate that you are both parents, it makes it easier, and also makes it easier for your kid not to play you, because things like school clothes, right? Do you need new school clothes? Well, Not necessarily. If your feet are getting bigger, you need new shoes, right? But if the child goes to one parent and says, well, I really want these shoes, and then goes to the other parent and says, I really want this other pair of shoes, and the child can easily double, triple up.
My son already does that at 3, and we're in the same household. He's like, he knows that he can play mom, and he can't get over on dad. And I'm like, wow, this is starting at 3 years old. So I can't even imagine in 2 households managing that.
Such great advice. And Kathryn, before we let you go, we have what are your school photos, I hear?
Oh, dear.
Look at you.
Now, Mork from Ork wore that very same outfit, okay?
The suspenders are like everything, Kathryn.
Is that, what year is that?
It was in the 70s. It was very trendy. It was very on trend.
Okay. I love how you're defending your back-to-school fashion.
I love that.
And defending parents as well. Thanks so much for the great advice, Kathryn.
We'll be back with more right after this.